Incredible moment, single dad janitor's plea saves child discover the CEO's surprising response. The soft patter of rain against the windows sang a lullaby over the upscale law firm, where Jake pushed his mop across the marble floor, grateful for the soothing sound. But today, something felt off. The office buzzed with festive energy, laughter erupted, and music drifted into the echoing corridors. He put a little extra elbow grease into his work, feeling the familiar urge to impress, to ensure that Lily has the brightest smiles during their weekend outings. His pride, in his work, his daughter, those weekend walks, they were everything. Suddenly, the air shifted. A frantic parent burst through the glazed doors, shouting, "My son! He's gone." The words hit him like a cold splash of water. Jake's heart raced. In his gut, he knew the gut-wrenching pang of fear, the kind that twisted his insides when he worried about Lily. Lost in the maze of lively chatter, a child was missing. For a moment, he hesitated. Should he step in? He was just the janitor, just a man who hurried past, invisible to the scurrying professionals in their tailored suits. But as the crowd began to swirl with panic, something flickered inside him, igniting his instincts. "Everyone, we need to search. Now." His voice rang out, but it felt hollow against the luxurious backdrop. The polished figures barely turned, and he noticed the sharp contrast between their blind confidence and his desperate gaze. Amongst them, Amanda, the CEO, seemingly absorbed in her own world, gave a dismissive wave, her eyes darting around like a hawk searching for another prey. Frustration brewed within Jake. Didn't they see? Didn't they feel the urgency? Their indifference stung, solidifying the chasm between them. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a surge of determination, he plunged into the crowd, calling on those milling around. We need to split up. Look everywhere. Still, their muted expressions froze in place. It felt like standing at a precipice while everyone else casually leaned back from the edge. Panic seeped into him, he could almost feel the child's frightened breaths, the tears waiting to spill from a distraught parent. As the minutes ticked by, stakes rose. Jake was anxious, muscles tight with the pressing fear of failure. He spotted Amanda again, her immaculate dress contrasts sharply against the chaos brewing. Could she shake the constraints of her privilege just for this moment? Facing her seemed to magnify his own insignificance all the more. Then he saw it, the small dark corner of the office hardly looked visited. The twisted remnants of forgotten toys by the potted plants reminded him of Lily's laughter, just moments before, splashing in the rain. Desperation clawed at his heart. Would he later become the man no one noticed at all? As he fought against his swirling thoughts, he gathered every ounce of resolve. Would he remain the unvoiced janitor endlessly mopping away in those shiny floors? Or today, could he drill into the perceptions of the people around him to demand recognition? As chaos painted that room, an airy silence echoed louder than words, leaving Jake right there caught amidst human frailty. The child was still missing and the clock was relentless, ticking insistently towards the storm of acknowledgement or oblivion. Jake's mind snapped into focus as he approached the dark corner. Consumed by urgency, he crouched down, feeling the cold ceramic of the potted plants beneath his hands. In that instant, the world around him faded into a muted backdrop, each tick of the clock amplified in his ears. Emotions surged. He was a father, not just a janitor, and every instinct he had screamed to protect and find this child. With a quick glance over his shoulder, he gauged the crowd's response. The anxiety in the air was palpable. Still, the backdrop of indifference from the polished elites weighed heavily on him, each moment solidifying his determination. "Please let him be here," he whispered under his breath, the words mixing with his fervent hope. He pushed the edges of the plants apart, digging into the shadows. The scattered toys faded into relevance. His heart plummeted when he found nothing. Could he afford to keep searching here, overlooking other desperate cries? His daughter's face flashed before him, her joyful laughter echoing in his mind like a fleeting melody. He straightened, searching the nearest office doors. Perhaps, he thought, if he could muster the audacity to push beyond the invisible wall that surrounded the executives, they might feel compelled to join him for once instead of watching him as if he were a part of the decor. Let's look in the other offices. Jake jolted forward, his voice rising above the clamor, desperation now infused with authority. A few heads turned, but their looks were those of mere curiosity, not the urgency he craved. He sighed, a bitter taste pooling in his mouth. The ego of the office had kept him muted, but something shifted within. It was as though the urgency dredged up a silent howl of defiance. He opened the nearest door and began checking inside, regardless of whether anyone followed. Inside a partitioned office, he found a quiet sanctuary, a refuge from the chaos outside. But the office held no child, just the sterile scent of polished wood and coffee. "Come on," Jake urged himself. "You can't let this go." He pushed further down the hallway, his heartbeat matching the intricate rhythm of his steps. Yet, as he examined each room, he felt the frantic energy draining away. What if he failed? That shadow of doubt curled into a question he dared not voice. Could he really take on a challenge so big in a world that reinforced his insignificance daily? But as he stumbled into another empty office, the silence nudged at him. It had ignited something deeper, a raw, unpolished resolve imbuing every inch of his being. Is this what it meant to be brave? To act despite feeling puny in comparison to the opulence that cloaked the firm around him? He stepped back into the corridor, eyes darting to the suited figures hovering at the periphery. Then it hit him, a revelation tucked under his determination. Maybe he wasn't just an observer anymore. The act of searching for that child transformed the unnoticeable janitor into a vital force, a voice advocating for urgency amidst indifference. With fresh conviction, he called out, "Anyone willing to help? This child needs us." A few blinked, hesitant, but he saw a flicker of recognition in one passing attorney. Would they respond? The moment teetered on the edge of lifeless apathy and the longing for collective action. Jake felt the specter of their staring eyes weigh incredibly heavy before he turned that weight into action. The walls around him could not contain his movement, a stranging fear propelled him into relentless effort. He glimpsed hope amidst uncertainty. This effort may make a difference. And as he prepared to confront Amanda, something fierce ignited within him. Perhaps fighting for that child's safety would awaken something in him he had dormant for too long. Would Jake emerge as a man beyond the janitor's identity tonight, or would that too slip away into the shadows he fought against? The stakes heightened as he stepped closer to the heart of the matter, the momentum growing. Everything hung on his next question. Jake stood poised, the weight of the moment heavy on his shoulders. The distant murmurs of the crowd faded as he concentrated, heart thundering. Each glance from the suited individuals ricocheted against the walls of his resolve. Would they join him in this plea, or remain spectators in their gilded cages? He took a deep breath, feeling the fabric of his uniform scratch against him, a reminder of his role, always cleaning, always invisible. But tonight, he couldn't be invisible. Nothing mattered more than finding that child, of making his voice heard above the sterile hum of the office. His thoughts raced. It was not just about the child anymore, it was about asserting his worth in a world that often dismissed him as unimportant. He cleared his throat, preparing for the next part of his challenge. "Amanda!" he called out, locking eyes with the CEO standing inside her office, the door ajar. The look on her face was one of surprise, maybe even apprehension. The elite surrounded her, and for a fleeting moment, Jake wondered if he could appeal to her humanity. "What are you doing?" she responded, incredulous, her voice edged with the tone of a woman who rarely has her authority challenged. "We need to look for the child. He could be anywhere, and time is slipping away." His voice carved through the haze of indifference, the desperation in it sharper than the scent of coffee in the air. The crowded office lurched, some attorneys exchanging glances, while others appeared ready to disregard Jake entirely. Had he truly crossed a line? A child? Amanda frowned, now standing taller, arms crossed defensively. This is a serious environment. We can't have you disrupting. Before she could finish, Jake found himself pushing through the invisible barrier of her authority. You're right, it is serious. A child is missing. We're here in our roles, in our positions. But beneath our uniforms and titles, we're all human. We have to act more than just watch. The words tumbled out, bold and uncompromising. He watched her reaction closely. He could see the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, a crack in the polished armor. Did it resonate with her? Did she remember losing something precious? Underneath the veneer of corporate hierarchy, Jake felt the rush of realization. This moment was as much about her as it was about him. It was a duel of human connection against the machinery of professionalism. Her world met his in an intersection of purpose and vulnerability. Amanda, please. He took a step closer to her office, shrouded in smells of fresh papers and antiseptic. If we don't search together, we might lose everything that makes us who we are. Help me. For a heartbeat, he caught her gaze, and something electric connected them, an unspoken acknowledgement of fear, urgency, and perhaps an underlying power struggle. Would she coax him back into the shadows, or would she choose to step forward into the light with him? The air thickened with tension. Jake's palms were clammy, heart racing. Each moment stretched like taffy, the outcome hanging delicately on her response. Fine, she finally said, surprising everyone in the room. Let us see what we can do. Relief washed over him, but with it came an undercurrent of anxiety. This was not just a child's life at stake. It was a battle for respect, for his own identity beyond the janitor's uniform. As Amanda rallied her team, Jake felt the intimacy of personal growth igniting within him, a visceral understanding that he was indeed more than he seemed. But as they stepped into action, the weight of collective responsibility coalesced. Would they really work together, or would this just be another exercise in futility? The path ahead shimmered with possibility but was veiled in uncertainty. As they moved towards the door, energy transformed into purpose, leaving Jake wondering, what if tonight wasn't merely about finding a child, but about discovering himself in the process? Would he emerge changed? Or would the moment slip away, just like the child they sought? The hall felt empty and vast as they hurried forward. Where would this pivotal moment lead him next? Jake's heart pounded in rhythm with each step towards the door, a surge of adrenaline propelling him into a world where he had long been an outsider. He glanced at Amanda, realizing she was now an unlikely ally. The uncertainty in her eyes mirrored his own, steeped in a mixture of anticipation and dread. As they emerged into the bustling corridor, corporate life continued its frenetic dance, a stark contrast to the urgency that now bound them. Jake could feel the business-like murmurs and confident strides enveloping him, making him acutely aware of the divide between his unassuming role and the towering suits that surrounded him. They reached the stairwell, its steel ambience cold and unwelcoming. Amanda commanded her team to regroup, yet Jake could sense how this turned into a collective waiting game, the gravity of their new mission an invisible weight. It dawned on him that they, too, were defining his journey. Jake clenched his fists, pushing the doubts out of his mind. Each of you knows how to make quick decisions, he said, finding his voice amid the corporate chatter. Use your skills to find the boy. We have to think strategically. Suddenly, a flicker of defiance sparked within him. For so long, he had operated behind the scenes. Now, he was leading back from the fore. The eyes of Amanda and her team bore into him, some intrigued by his unexpected leadership. Taking a breath, he continued, we can split into teams. One can check the basement levels where they might hide, while another groups can scan the upper floors. Elevators or stairs, any corner of this building could be a hiding spot. As each individual began to nod, Jake felt the first inklings of respect flow back from them, a recognition of his strategic insight that was long buried. It was empowering yet terrifying. Would they truly heed his directions? Would he be able to turn this urgency into decisive, effective action? Let us move. Amanda's order sliced through the air, and he was reassured by the way she acknowledged his blueprint without reservation. With a newfound focus, Jake pushed aside his previous insecurity for the sake of purpose. As everyone disbanded into a flurry of activity, he found himself alongside Amanda. The initial surprise on her face had now transformed into determination, a shared mission overshadowing their past differences. "Jake," Amanda said, voice steady, "I didn't realize you had this much insight into how a corporation operates." The acknowledgement stung pleasantly. "It's not about titles, it's about wanting to make a difference." Jake's response came naturally, a quiet conviction solidifying within him. He felt a spark of self-worth bubbling, a feeling he had long written off as unattainable. They traversed through different levels of the building, their movements composed, directed with urgency yet marked by moments of reflection. Jake noted the relentless corporate routines that surrounded them, a stark reminder of what he had been part of all his life. But today was different, he was no longer just an employee cleaning up after others. As they entered the basement, a sharp echo reverberated around them, enhancing the tension. Jake's instincts flared, the missing child was near, he could sense it. But would his team listen if he called out to them again? Would they see him as a leader, or as a mere janitor lost in a sea of polished intellects? "What if we don't find him?" Amanda looked at him, her brow knotted with concern, and for a moment, vulnerability washed over her, breaking the imposing facade she maintained. "We will find him," Jake replied more firmly than he felt inside. "But we have to believe in each other. We have to act on our shared humanity." As they dove deeper into the depths of the building, a pivotal moment loomed on the horizon. Jake felt the change within himself, the resolve strengthening around him. He was ready for whatever challenge awaited. But as they reached a potential hiding spot, a sudden noise echoed faintly nearby, an unexpected sound that sent a shockwave through Jake's system. What if it was him? "Do you hear that?" he whispered, adrenaline spiking, as doubt lingered just behind his consciousness. The unfolding realities hung heavy in the air. Would they emerge as heroes or merely return to anonymity? Would he find more than just the child? Would he find himself? The sound grew sharper, reverberating against the cold concrete walls. Jake's heart raced, a mix of dread and fierce hope coiling tightly in his chest. "Stay alert," he urged, moving toward the origin of the noise. Each step felt monumental. Was it courage propelling him or desperation? Amanda followed closely, her eyes probing the shadows. "Jake, do you have a plan?" "Our best chance is to listen first. We need to pinpoint exactly where it's coming from." His voice was steadier than he thought it could be. Strangely, the basement, dark and foreboding, now felt like a crucible forging something new within him, a sense of responsibility unlike any he had embraced before. They paused, straining to make sense of their surroundings. Shadows loomed like specters, but Jake felt an unexpected swell of confidence. This wasn't just about finding the boy, it was about reshaping who he was in the eyes of his colleagues and, more importantly, in his own eyes. The noise echoed again, a muffled cry that twisted in Jake's gut. "This way," he whispered, and with Amanda close behind, they crept toward a cramped storage room, its door slightly ajar. Jake pushed the door open slowly, anxiety simmering within. He looked around, feeling exposed yet anchored by a newfound authority. Within the dim light, he could finally see a small figure huddled in the corner, unmistakable despite the shadows. "Hey! We're here to help you," Jake called gently, his words laden with urgency but tempered by compassion. The boy looked up, wild-eyed, and for a breathless moment, Jake caught a glimpse of pure, unfiltered fear. "Don't be scared," he squatted down to the child's level. "What's your name?" "Eddie," the boy stammered, voice shaky. Jake nodded, that familiar feeling of connection igniting within him. Eddie, we're going to get you out of here. Just stay calm. The boy nodded, recognition dawning on him, as if Jake had become a lifeline in a storm he didn't know how to navigate. Just then, footsteps echoed in the hallway, sharp and demanding, jolting Jake back to the precarious reality they were in. We need to hurry, Amanda urged. The team is searching for us too. He stood, a protective instinct surging through him. No, we need them to see this moment. We were all so focused on titles and roles, but that doesn't matter now. Jake, we will expose ourselves, Amanda pressed, glancing at the door. If they catch us we can't hide. I refuse to. The final image of Eddie being forgotten, Jake interjected, instinctively taking charge. He walked toward the door, peering out to ensure the coast was clear, determination solidifying within him. Would the bravado be enough to challenge the familiar puppeteer strings of fear pulling at his heart? Jake wanted to rise, not just for himself but for Eddie. He motioned for Amanda to stay behind him, and with that gesture, trust exchanged between them. He knew Amanda was more than just a corporate player, she was family now, as was the boy he had just vowed to protect. We need to go out together, he said. If we're caught, at least we'll be together, and they'll have to see us. They can't ignore us then. Amanda's expression shifted as realization washed over her. She wasn't just following orders, she was part of something bigger. She nodded, grounding herself in action. With Eddie holding tightly to his hand, Jake stepped out into the corridor, suddenly feeling the shift of power. Every hurried heartbeat echoed the conviction rising within him. The desperate search had uncovered more than a child, it had unearthed a leader from the depths of complacency. But as they moved forward, the inevitable confrontation loomed. The team might not share in the shared humanity he aspired to evoke. Would he have the strength to defend his newfound courage when faced with direct challenge? Step back. A voice suddenly boomed from the hallway ahead, halting Jake's momentum. The moment of truth was upon him. Would he hold fast to the principles burgeoning inside, or would the familiar weight of doubt pull him back into the shadows? The command echoed through the corridor, reverberating like thunder. Jake's heart plunged into a tumult of conflicting emotions, fear, courage, and an oppressive weight of responsibility. He turned instinctively, tightening his grip on Eddie's hand. The fear in the child's wide eyes mirrored the panic churning in his own stomach. Jake, we need to go. Amanda whispered urgently, her voice edged with anxiety. But the authority in that voice couldn't drown out the call to action surging through him. They had come too far to retreat now. This was no longer just about self-preservation. Step back. The voice barked again, closer now, defining the boundaries within which he must maneuver. Jake peered around the corner, catching a flash of uniforms, the harsh glare of flashlights slicing through the darkness. They had a purpose, a collective intent, marching with an assurance built on hierarchy and status so foreign to what he now felt. He glanced back at Amanda, who remained by his side, resolute yet apprehensive. In that fleeting moment, Jake realized they were no longer in separate fights. They were entwined in a cause that transcended their individual roles, fueled by a shared commitment to protect someone helpless. It sparked a new belief in him, a conviction that took root deep within his core. Titles and corporate responsibilities faded into insignificance against human decency. Don't let go, Eddie, Jake whispered, squatting to level with the boy. We're not alone. We have each other. You trust me, right? The boy, though trembling, nodded. Jake felt a swell of determination cresting like a wave, threatening to break through the barriers he had built over years of professional detachment. The advancing voices grew nearer, and Jake felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. We don't have time to wait for support, he said, glancing at Amanda. They need to see us. A spark of defiance ignited in Amanda's eyes, reaffirming their shared resolve. Together, then, she affirmed, unleashing a breath of conviction that seemed to light a fire in the pale corridor. The urgency was tangible, it pushed him forward, prompting an instinctual need to confront the threatening presence ahead. Jake stood tall, coordinating a plan that felt as spontaneous as it was necessary. "On my count, we'll step out, arms raised," he instructed Amanda, trying to ground his rapidly swirling emotions. "If we can show them we're not a threat, they'll have to listen." "Okay." Her voice was steady now, reinvigorated by purpose. Eddie's grip tightened, and Jake's heart raced not with fear, but with a burgeoning sense of leadership he couldn't afford to deny any longer. In 3, 2, 1. Jake stepped into the light, arms raised, an unexpected figure in the face of authority. The officers halted, confusion etched on their faces. In that moment, Jake found a strange sanctuary, standing tall before them, armed not with weapons or credentials, but with the raw power of his conviction. "Stop!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the oppressive air. "You don't need to be afraid of us. We're not your enemies." The reactions varied. Some officers stiffened, others exchanged quick glances as if questioning their very purpose. They hadn't anticipated this resistance from a mere janitor, much less a man who should have been subordinate to their authority. "What is going on here?" an officer demanded, their posture wavering slightly under the emotional weight of Jake's fearless approach. "Please, just listen," Jake implored, voice resonating with urgency. "We found Eddie here. He needs help, and so do we. We can't let fear blind us to the humanity in front of us." The air thickened with anticipation as Jake realized he was challenging not just the officers but a mindset that had institutionalized fear and compliance in all of them. Would they recognize the merit in his plea, or would they cling to their preconceived notions of power and control? As Jake faced the tense standoff, an unexpected thought whisked through his mind. The boy's presence had illuminated hidden strengths within him, assets he hadn't known existed. But a flicker of trepidation stirred beneath his newfound authority. Could he truly catalyze a transformation in this battleground of differences? "Help us save him," Jake demanded, heart racing, as if the very fabric of his professional identity began to unravel, revealing a deeper truth. The moment stretched, a tenuous balance between vulnerability and tenacity poised to tip in either direction. But clearly, a storm was brewing, and the resolution hung tantalizingly in the balance. Would this fragile alliance coalesce, or would it fragment under the weight of institutional protocol? In this charged space, Jake grasped the heart of his evolution as well as the enormity of the risks looming ahead. The moment's truth was laden with consequences that could forever alter his life. And yet, the zealous call of something greater surged within him, urging him onward as the tension coiled tighter, waiting to erupt. As Jake stood at the precipice of confrontation, a cacophony of emotions swirled inside him, morphing fear into clarity. The officer's confusion radiated through the air, piercing the weighty silence. He channeled this unexpected power, a mixture of vulnerability and audacity, and felt a shift within himself. Maybe, just maybe, he was more than just the janitor, perhaps he was a voice that could reverberate through their sterile bureaucratic walls. "Why should we help you?" the officer asked, skepticism draping his words like a heavy cloak. But in Jake's gaze lay something raw and unyielding belief that undercut the officer's challenge. "Because Eddie represents everything that's worth protecting," Jake retorted, his voice steadying. "He is scared, alone, just a child seeking refuge. You can't ignore that." Amanda stood beside him, her presence a silent echo of resolve, fortifying Jake. She nodded subtly, as if to affirm that they were both ready to fight this battle together. A few heartbeats past time slowed, each blink felt like an eternity. The officers, visibly affected, shared glances that spoke volumes. It was a moment of reckoning, the ironclad roles of authority weakened by a shared humanity. Then one officer stepped forward, punctuating the tension with an unwavering voice. "All right, we need to hear your story. It's not usual to see someone in your position stand up like this." Jake's heart quickened. He was an unexpected architect of dialogue, defying the limitations of his workplace identity. Perhaps it was Eddie's innocence, or perhaps it was Amanda's steadfastness, but Jake felt the gravity of the moment lift him up. "We were searching for help," he began, recounting not only how they had found Eddie but weaving in the urgency born out of their fear to lose who mattered most. He explained how their journey was not merely a quest for survival, but rather a desperate attempt to save a child who represented hope in the darkness he himself had felt suffocating for so long. With every word, Jake's confidence surged. With each vivid detail, he shed the last vestiges of his prior self, afraid to speak out, hesitant to claim his worth. The officers listened, their ennui receding like a tide ebbing from the shore. As the final chords of his story lingered in the somber space, Jake sensed a shift. "We need to mobilize a response team," the lead officer said, breaking the silence. "Let us not waste time." At that moment, a voice cracked through the air, not from the officers but from Amanda. "Thank you," she exclaimed, her relief palpable. It was more than gratitude, it was an acknowledgement of Jake's newfound strength. A web of interdependence had been formed between them, binding courage to humanity. As the officers hustled to initiate action, a cold realization crept into Jake's thoughts as he observed their cooperation. He had no guarantees that their intervention would end tragically or triumphantly. The anxiety that seized him previously flipped into a realizing pulse of anticipation. Will it ever be enough? Jake questioned himself, searching for the clarity that had spiraled into frustration. This was just one moment in the effort to dismantle a daunting system. Clarity turned to resolve. He was staring into the depths of a slow awakening. Perhaps this would be merely the first step in asserting himself and reclaiming his identity, someone capable, someone who could incite change even amid chaos. Jake caught a glimpse of Amanda, her hopeful gaze steady upon him. The weight of his prior detachment still loomed, yet it now felt lightweight against the horizon of what he could discover within himself. He could fulfill a role in a cause that was bigger than himself, and in doing so, find restoration in his purpose. As they awaited the response team, exhaustion settled in. But beneath the fatigue, a newfound drive ignited, sparked by the thought, what else could he become when propelling forward with conviction? But before this desire could take form, the ground shifted beneath them. An ominous roar echoed through the corridor. Horrified, Jake whipped around, and the sight shattered the tenuous hope that had begun to bloom. The officers were scrambling, looking pale and wary, an unmistakable signal of impending discord hung heavy in the air. The new challenge loomed, one that might shatter their hard-earned alliance and threaten all they had fought for. And as that recognition seeped through his bones, Jake realized one undeniable truth: the battle for Eddie was just beginning. The sound reverberated through the corridor like a thunderclap, shattering the precarious calm that had gathered. Jake's heart raced as he instinctively stepped closer to Amanda, protective instincts sharpening amidst uncertainty. The officers, their confident demeanor now compromised, exchanged frantic glances. The air thickened with tension. "What was that?" one officer asked, panic creeping into his voice. They turned towards the source of the sound, weapons drawing closer to their chests, readying for whatever threat loomed ahead. Jake felt the gnawing fear tighten around his chest. It wasn't just the noise, it was the realization that the fragile alliance they'd just forged would face a trial by fire. Their backs were against the wall now, and in a world where might often overruled right, Jake was acutely aware of how easily hard-won progress could slip back into shadows. "I think it's coming from the maintenance area," Amanda whispered, her eyes wide with concern. Jake nodded, feeling an impulse to follow but rooted by an unshakable need to remain with Eddie, who still lay vulnerable and unaware of the maelstrom brewing around him. "Stay here," he said to Amanda, his voice surprisingly firm. "I'm going to see what's happening." The choice churned in his mind: fear for Eddie or the curiosity that beckoned him towards the chaos. In this defining moment, Jake felt the contours of his identity shifting again. The janitor who often shied away from confrontation was now teetering on the edge of becoming a protector, driven by something deeper than himself. He pushed through a door leading to the maintenance area, heart pounding, readying himself for whatever he might uncover. The metallic scent of tools and the smell of stale coffee flooded his senses, confusing him momentarily before he caught sight of movement. Two figures loomed in the dim light. One was a maintenance worker, a scruffy man Jake barely recognized. The other was a uniformed officer, an imposing silhouette against the fluorescent lights. The officer seemed to be towering over the worker, his manner aggressive and tense. "Your negligence just put this place in jeopardy. Do you even understand what you're risking?" The officer barked, his voice venomous. The worker stammered, words lost as he shuffled backward, palms upturned in a half-hearted plea for understanding. Jake felt a rush of anger bubble up within him. He was no longer just a passive observer, he had witnessed injustice too often. "Stop!" Jake shouted, breaking through the tension with a sudden burst of defiance. The officer looked at him, surprise etching across his face, and for a moment, the chaos quieted. "Jake, back off. You don't need to involve yourself in this," the officer warned, irritation lacing his words, but Jake stood his ground. "What you're doing isn't right," he asserted, each word steady and deliberate, surprising even himself. The weight of the officer's authority crumbled slightly under the unwavering gaze of someone who had finally begun to reclaim his voice. "You want to do what's right? Step aside, janitor." "This doesn't concern you," the officer replied, yet the doubt in his eyes hinted at an uneasy recognition of their shared humanity. "Actually, it does concern me," Jake replied, no longer fearful of the title that had trapped him for too long. "I am part of this place, just like everyone else. And like everyone else, I have the right to speak out against injustice." In that moment, Jake realized that the transformation he sought wouldn't just come from words spoken in the presence of authority. It would require actively challenging misconduct. His courage would be met with backlash, but it was a price he was ready to pay for Eddie. As the officer's face darkened, an unsettling thought crossed Jake's mind: was he truly prepared for the consequences of this confrontation? The answer churned uncomfortably within him, filled with uncertainty and a craving for purpose. Before he could delve further into the implications of his defiance, an unexpected sound shattered the standoff. A high-pitched wail erupted from the direction where Eddie lay, mixing urgency with fear. Jake's heart plummeted. What had just begun as a moment of newfound bravery now transformed into a race against the clock. Would Jake's words and newfound resolve be enough to face the greater turmoil edging ever closer, or would he find himself battling not only the officers but also an unseen threat to Eddie? The path ahead swelled with potential discoveries and dire stakes, propelling him deeper into a fight that felt both daunting and exhilarating. The truth was plain: Jake had just begun to awaken to the depths of his own strength. Would he be able to harness it, or would the consequences of his choices spiral beyond his control? He steeled himself as he turned towards Eddie's cries, the urgency driving him toward a new understanding of what true power might mean. Jake darted back through the door, the echoing cries of Eddie pulling him like gravity. Each frantic scream raised the stakes, fusing fear with adrenaline as he rushed past the officers who still glared at him. Their hardened expressions were a reminder that he was on unfriendly territory, yet Jake felt invincible. The path he had chosen, a strange, courageous defiance, was illuminating corners of his mind that had previously lain dormant. He didn't hesitate at the scene where Eddie lay. The child's distress carved a deeper motivation into Jake's spirit. Rushing to his side, Jake knelt, the floor cold and unyielding beneath him. "Eddie, I'm here," he whispered in a soothing tone that belied the chaos around. He placed a hand on the boy's trembling shoulder, grounding both of them. Eddie's eyes were wide with fear, brimming with tears that threatened to spill over. "Jake, I can't find my mom. She went to help, and I don't know what's happening." The urgency in Eddie's voice shattered any lingering doubt Jake had about his growing role. "I know, buddy. We're going to find her. Stay close to me, okay?" Jake felt a warmth surge through him, steadying his resolve. His instincts screamed that finding Eddie's mother wasn't just about the child's safety. It became a mission to preserve the sanctuary, the safe space for Eddie, and perhaps for Jake himself. In the background, tension between the officers and the maintenance worker festered, but Jake was no longer interested in external conflicts. His focus narrowed to the child beside him, the embodiment of innocence in a time of turmoil. The earlier fear that had wrapped around his chest like a vice began to loosen as a new determination set in. Listen to me, Jake, Eddie said quietly, his little voice trembling. What if they don't come back? His eyes searched Jake's for reassurance, a trust that felt both weighty and fragile. The question hit Jake hard. He saw the fear of abandonment reflected in Eddie's gaze, echoing his own childhood fears of being voiceless in a world that didn't care. We won't let that happen, Jake assured, that same surge of courage flooding his heart. We'll be brave together, okay? Jake stood up with newfound purpose. Peering past the chaotic scene, he noticed a flickering light near a broken window, something out of place. Eddie, stay right here, he instructed, his tone firm. The child nodded, clutching his small hands, an invisible tether forming between them. As Jake made his way toward the source of the light, he felt the shift within himself, a sharp distinction from the fearful janitor who avoided confrontation to a resolute individual desperate to protect what mattered. Rounding the corner into the hallway filled with shadows, Jake felt exposed, but fear transformed into focus. The flickering light danced more boldly now, casting erratic shadows along the walls that mirrored the rising doubts in his mind. Advancing cautiously, he found a set of doors that had been pushed ajar. The sound of crying escalated, sharper and more urgent. Who was behind those doors? Could it be more than he and Eddie had bargained for, or perhaps a clue leading to a resolution? Jake's hands fisted at his sides, as the weight of the moment gripped him. The door was his next obstacle, a threshold between uncertainty and the chance for answers. Would he muster the strength required to confront whatever lay beyond? Taking a deep breath, he prepared to open the door. This moment would test his growth, demanding not just bravery, but also unwavering resolve. As he pushed through, uncertainty mingled with an exhilarating sense of purpose. Beyond awaited challenges he could not predict, but one thing was certain: Jake was prepared to face them head-on. Would he find not just a solution for Eddie, but a deeper understanding of his own identity in the process? The path ahead pulsed with promise and peril, setting the stage for vital choices that lay just beyond that door. Jake thrust the door open, his heart hammering at the threshold of uncertainty. The air felt charged as he stepped inside, braced for whatever confrontation awaited him. Beyond the door, he found himself in a cramped utility room, cluttered with cleaning supplies and loomed by shadows. In the far corner, the flickering light originated from an old, cumbersome generator that buzzed ominously. But it wasn't just the generator that caught his attention. Nestled behind it lay a shivering figure, Eddie's mother, her eyes wide with panic. "Eddie!" she cried out, and the desperation echoed through Jake's core, setting a fire inside him. Time seemed to flow in slow motions as he moved toward her, motivation propelled by the profound need to reunite them. It's okay," he said gently, extending a hand. "Eddie is safe. He's outside." Her expression shifted from fear to cautious hope, and for the first time, Jake felt an overwhelming sense of purpose wash over him. The chaos he'd navigated through moments ago faded into the background, leaving only this moment of connection, a necessary jolt of humanity that sparked a realization deep within him. "Thank you for bringing him back to me," she gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks, filled with raw emotion. Jake felt the warmth of recognition. He was no longer simply a janitor, but a guardian of hope, and the shift in his identity surfaced with clarity. "Let's get out of here," Jake urged, glancing over his shoulder at the doorway, the tension outside still palpable. With careful steps, he helped her rise, her hand shaky as it fought to steady itself with him alongside her. But then, chaos called again. The clamorous sounds from the hallway surged in intensity. Were the officers pursuing them, or someone else entirely? Jake's resolve solidified. This was about more than just safety, it was about acknowledging their shared humanity, and he was ready to step into that light. "Follow me," Jake instructed, guiding them both out of the utility room with purpose. Emerging into the corridor, he swung around to face Amanda, who had gathered with the officers, her gaze piercing through the confusion momentarily. The urgency bubbled between them, electrified by every unspoken word. "We found her," he shouted, urgency coloring his voice. "Good work," Amanda exclaimed, her shock transforming into admiration. But we need to keep everyone together. It's too dangerous. For a fleeting moment, Jake felt the validation surge through him. But the reality beneath the surface gripped him tighter. The question formed in the back of his mind, could he maintain his newfound assertiveness? Listen, we've all seen the potential for solidarity today, Jake declared, grounding his voice amidst the rising tension. Let us create a path towards safety, not just for us, but for Eddie and his mother. Some officers began to murmur, a blend of respect and concern shimmering in their expressions. It was an unexpected pivot, but Jake could sense the undercurrents of fear tagging along, and he needed to strip that fear away just as he had learned to release his own. Let us split into groups, Jake proposed, channeling the clarity he gained through urgency. Ensure every exit is covered, we need to look out for one another. With Amanda's nod of approval, a wave of willingness rippled through their ranks. For the first time in this sterile corporate space, Jake saw them as individuals drawn together for a singular purpose. As they coordinated their efforts, he felt his spirit uplift, rising to meet the challenge transcending their roles, drawing him deeper into the fray. The vulnerability he once felt now transformed into courage, illuminating their mission as they approached the doors leading back to the crowds outside. Stay close to me, Eddie, he urged, grasping the child's small hand firmly, an anchor against the churning uncertainties ahead. Okay, Jake, Eddie replied softly, as if holding on to the bond between them was a lifeline fashioned for hope. Pushing through the double doors, Jake found himself standing in the lobby, where the pulse of chaos faded into a resolve, a determination spurred by shared purpose. No longer just the janitor mopping floors, he filled his role with agency and authority, proud of the new identity he'd forged amidst despair. As they regrouped, Amanda tucked beside him, the shared understanding lingering as a proud acknowledgement of their mutual journey. Jake had awoken to who he could be not just in the eyes of others, but within himself. When they stepped outside, the sounds of sirens faded into the soft patter of rain against the pavement. The world had shifted, it breathed in expectation, awaiting what lay ahead. The bonds formed in those moments within the corporate jungle unfurled possibilities for deeper collaboration and respect. Thank you, Jake, Amanda said, turning to him, a genuine smile that transformed before his eyes. Today was extraordinary. He nodded, his heart swelling with something unfamiliar yet profound. He had embraced the leader he was always meant to be, drawing strength from the connections made when courage met empathy. As Eddie ran into his mother's arms, Jake caught a glimpse of the child's smile, the hope he fought to protect now a reality. In that singular moment, he truly understood the transformative power of embracing one's humanity. Jake's journey had just begun, but within it lay the promise of possibility, an invitation to keep forging ahead on this newfound path, driven by purpose and connection. The realization sank in, true fulfillment stemmed not from titles or positions, but from the light found in collective intentions. And as he walked into the rain with Amanda beside him and Eddie's laughter echoing behind, Jake knew he had finally stepped out of the shadows. This was not just an end, it was an extraordinary beginning. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, trust me, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, let us keep the conversation alive. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because change is only meaningful when it's shared. Don't wait even one more second to send this message out. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.